Our gospel reading this week comes from Mark chapter 10, verses 46 to 52. As Jesus and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called to the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. So again, Jesus asked the question, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked this question in our gospel reading from last week. He asked this of James and John. This week in our Bible study, I asked those present to consider what their answer would be if Jesus asked this question of them. What do you want me to do for you? We really struggled to answer the question. It is a hard question for so many reasons. I struggled to come up with an answer because I was trying to come up with the best answer. If I was given one chance for Jesus to do for me what I wanted to make sure it was really, really good. I wanted to make sure that I could really benefit from Jesus's power. I didn't want to waste this opportunity. In some respects, I was thinking about this question as if Jesus were a magic genie, here to grant me one wish. But Jesus is not a magic genie. What he offers is much more than magic. He offers complete forgiveness and life-transforming grace. But going back to answering the question, I think all of our answers would be something related to wanting a situation or a relationship to be transformed. We want things to be different than they are now. Our world is so broken, and we long for the brokenness to be made whole. Our gospel story today reminds us that Jesus does have the power to transform relationships and situations. And there's actually two instances of transformation in this story. The obvious transformation is that of Bartimaeus. He was blind, but then he could see. This was a physical transformation as he regained his sight. He was then able to go about his life without the challenges of being blind. But there was also a spiritual transformation. Bartimaeus became a follower of Jesus. After this encounter, he could spiritually see who Jesus was, and he knew that he wanted to dedicate his life to literally and figuratively following Jesus. But the crowd was also transformed. The crowd shifted from sternly ordering Bartimaeus to be quiet to actually playing a role in his healing. When Jesus asked the crowd to call Bartimaeus to where Jesus was, the crowd quickly transformed from trying to silence him to giving him hope. The crowd encouraged him and probably even guided Bartimaeus to Jesus, to where he would be healed. They went from denying that Bartimaeus should have a voice to, I'm sure, being amazed and astounded by the healing that Jesus did. They too were able to see what Jesus was capable of. They were transformed. Two instances of transformation that Jesus brought about. But this story is complicated by reality. We know that there are some cases where people receive healing, and there are some instances where people are not healed. I'm guessing that at some point, all of us have prayed fervently for people we love to be healed, and that healing didn't happen. We have seen bad things happen to people who are deeply faithful people. And there must have been dozens of other blind people who Jesus had to pass by on his travels and didn't restore their sight. None of this makes sense. The only inadequate explanation we have is to call it a mystery, which is deeply unsatisfying. Jesus didn't offer an explanation for why some people are healed and others aren't. We don't or can't understand all this. And yet there is hope. There is the promise that Jesus will bring about transformation. The good news is Jesus does offer us transformation. Jesus offers us hope that we and the world won't always be the way that we are. But the way in which this transformation happens and the timing in which this transformation happens won't always or ever make sense to our human brains. Even if this story doesn't actually help us understand it all, if we look at the words that Jesus said to Bartimaeus, "Your faith has made you well," it helps us to know how to live as followers of Jesus. It wasn't that Bartimaeus believed all the right things about Jesus and that cured his blindness. Bartimaeus didn't do all the right things and that healed him. Jesus did the act of healing. He healed Bartimaeus in spirit and in body, allowing him to see physically and spiritually. It was Bartimaeus' faith that made him well. Or to put it another way, Jesus healed Bartimaeus, and Bartimaeus' faith allowed him to receive that healing. And what is this faith that Bartimaeus had that allowed him to receive this healing, to be made well? I would argue that this faith that he demonstrated included a relationship with Jesus and an openness. When he came to Jesus, the first words out of Bartimaeus' mouth were, "My teacher," revealing his relationship with Jesus. Even though Bartimaeus most likely had never actually met Jesus in person, he clearly had a deep relationship with him. It was a personal and intimate relationship. It was a relationship of trust, as Bartimaeus boldly and persistently asked Jesus for what he needed. Bartimaeus seemed to recognize who Jesus was better than any of Jesus' other disciples. He had spent time developing this relationship. And it's clear that his relationship with Jesus had already changed his life and would further change his life. The openness that Bartimaeus had is seen in contrasting this story with the story of the rich man from a few weeks ago. The rich man couldn't let go of his possessions. His possessions were blocking him, preventing him from having a deep and full relationship with Jesus. He couldn't let go of his stuff, even when Jesus told him that was what was blocking him. Now consider Bartimaeus. Immediately when he was given the chance to be healed and to be in relationship with Jesus, he threw off his cloak and sprung up. Now, his cloak was probably his most expensive and precious possession, perhaps his only possession. It was what he used to keep himself warm at night and what he spread out during the day to collect alms. And he threw it off. He let go of it. He cast it out of the way. Perhaps in his eagerness to get to Jesus, he didn't want anything that could possibly slow him down. And leaving behind his cloak, he left behind the old Bartimaeus. He entered a new part of his life, a life of following Jesus. Bartimaeus' relationship with Jesus and his openness allowed him to be made well. His relationship and his openness allowed him to receive the healing that Jesus did. Jesus performed the miracle of healing, and Bartimaeus was able to recognize and welcome the way in which that healing transformed his life. So how are we to respond to this story? How are we to live? We are to be in relationship with Jesus and to be open. Faith is whatever opens up our eyes and ears and whole selves to see and hear and experience the good news that Jesus offers. Jesus brings about transformation and healing, and it's our relationship with Jesus and our openness that allows us to experience wellness, wholeness, transformation, the fullness of life that Jesus has promised us. Jesus invites us to examine what it is that holds us back from receiving what he offers us. So let go of those burdens. Let go of your preconceived notions of Jesus and what Jesus is doing in the world. Let go of everything that is blocking you from coming to Jesus. We are to do these practices that bring us closer to Jesus, even while joining together in community to strengthen one another in faith. It is Jesus who heals, and our faith makes us well. Let it be so. Amen.